Welcome back. A little earlier we were telling you about women who have advanced Africa's developments in various sectors are this evening being honoured and recognised. International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor is hosting the inaugural Charlotte Maxeke African Women Leadership Award. She has just taken to the podium. Let's listen in to the Minister.
Her studies made it possible for her to be groomed by a very famous American sociologist, civil rights activist, and a Pan-Africanist of note, W.E.B. Du Bois, who contributed immensely in shaping her outlook on the world. She graduated with a BSc degree and became the first woman in Southern Africa to graduate from a university. Maxeke, upon having graduated, returned to our country, her home, to educate her people, and became somewhat of a weapon for empowerment. Learning from her own experience abroad, she dedicated her life to the upliftment of others, as well as the struggle for liberation of black South Africans. She was a fierce opponent of the Donbass for black women and men, and helped to organize the anti-pass movement in Bloemfontein. In 1913, Maxeke led the first women's march in Bloemfontein against the extension of the odious passbook for women, and led a delegation to Prime Minister Louis Botha to discuss the issue of passes for women. What was intriguing about her at that time was that she was not afraid to enter traditional male spaces and challenge the status quo. She was the only woman in the room at the founding meeting of the South African Native National Congress, what we know today as the African National Congress, or ANC, at the Methodist Church in Vryhoek in Bloemfontein on the 8th of January 1912. She sat quietly while the men discussed whether she could remain in the meeting. Despite being much more intellectually advanced than all the men who were discussing her. In 1918, she co-founded the Bantu Women's League and became its first president, later creating much noise of public opinion against the disgusting practice of medical inspection of black women before they could enter domestic service. She was also involved in protests on the Witwatersrand about low wages for women, and participated in the formation of the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union in 1920. Now, all of us sitting here, if we are workers, we all believe we work very hard. And at the end of the day, we are really exhausted. But we don't form trade unions. We don't fight for women's rights. We don't march in the streets. We don't uplift others. And yet we work really hard and we are really tired. Maxeke saw education for Africans as a vehicle to liberation. She was asked by the then Ministry of Education, the colonial Ministry of South Africa, to testify before several government commissions in Johannesburg on matters concerning African education. So even those who were antagonistic to her recognized her qualities and sought her intellectual contribution. She taught at a primary and secondary school she co-founded called Wilberforce Institute in Everton in the Vaal. And can you believe that institute still exists today? So, for us in Durko and for many in South Africa, Maxeke is the embodiment of what an empowered woman can achieve for her people. And she's an excellent example of what education can do for a girl child in Africa and elsewhere in the world. Maxeke was a social worker and a welfare officer and served her people without funds and often for no pay whatsoever. Her opinions and recommendations were often sought by the government, and in many cases she fought for young black offenders and succeeded in getting them suspended sentences and access to schooling. She eventually, just listen to this woman, she eventually set up an employment agency for Africans in Johannesburg and worked to help young people who came into conflict with the law to obtain education and skills. All that she does is cause you to ask, what am I doing with my life? While being the first black woman in the many spaces she operated in, she understood that for meaningful representation of women, she needed to rally other women to amplify their voices in the struggle for gender equality. We salute the ethos that Charlotte Maxeke stood for, of human solidarity, of compassion, of sacrifice for the common good, as well as her people-centered approach to development and self-reliance. So to honor the legacy of this trailblazer, as DIRCO, we have developed a bold, transformative, and concrete program that will anchor South Africa's contribution to the UN Women Global Accelerated Plan for Gender Equality. Our program is called the Charlotte Maxeke African Women's Economic Justice and Rights Initiative, which we launched in 2021. Our initiative is being implemented through 6 flagship programs aimed at making a real impact on gender equality and women's empowerment. We recognize that while a great deal of efforts have gone towards safeguarding the civil and political rights of women, the economic rights of women and girls have largely been neglected. Through implementation of this initiative, South Africa seeks to mobilize the global community to support women's leadership across all the action coalitions of the UN Generation Equality Forum. The focus we've chosen is on economic justice and rights through education, training, and mentorship for women and youth, as well as through creating opportunities in economic participation, networking, diplomacy, and trade. One program of our DIRCO initiative is the training of women leaders from various sectors of society on conflict resolution, mediation, and negotiation. The graduates of this program then join the Gertrude Shope Women Mediators Network, moving from the premise that peace is a precursor to development. We believe it's pivotal that DIRCO complements its implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda with a program that is aimed at the economic empowerment of women. So we don't just want to say women should be involved in peace, negotiations, in post-conflict reconstruction. We also believe women must be economically empowered. We believe we can all learn important lessons from the life of Charlotte Maxeke. And I wish to remind you or recall her wise words when she said to her compatriots, women who were working closely with her. She said, and I quote, "This work is not for yourself. Kill that spirit of self and do not live above your people but with them. If you rise, bring someone with you." Close quotes. I also want to remind you of the words of another great woman who strived after me Charlotte Maxeke, and that is Me Albertina Sisulu, one of the most wonderful, humble, dignified leaders we've ever had in our country. She said, and I quote, "We are each required to walk our own road and then stop, assess what we have learned, and share it with others. It is only in this way that the next generation can learn from those who have walked before them. We can do no more than tell our story. Then it is up to them to make of it what they will." I encourage each of our award recipients tonight to please share their story with the next generation so that they can be inspired by your accomplishments and strive to be women of excellence, which is what we believe you are, and which is the reason we honor you today in the name of Me Charlotte Maxeke. I thank you very much, and I hope you will enjoy the evening and the awards. Thank you for being here.
Now, speaking of those awards, they'll be getting underway in a short while. From now, Theo Mashele is our reporter there. It's the inaugural Charlotte Maxeke African Women Leadership Awards. The International Relations Minister, Naledi Pandor, giving quite a background on the incredible woman that was Charlotte Maxeke. We'll go back there, I'm sure, later in the evening. We'll certainly have a full report on it for you here on eNCA.